Hello. Get your official products such as this marvelous t-shirt that I'm wearing, or this great coffee mug that I'm drinking out of, and many other products with the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis logo at https://www.zazzle.com/store/a-stuff-store, and make sure you get your 15% discount today.
Welcome to a new podcast show about stuff. It's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Here's your host, Stephen Davis.
Welcome to this week's episode of the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Today, I'm so happy to have a hip-hop pioneer in my midst, Mr. A.B. Money, who collaborated, worked with, and produced many successful artists such as Tupac, Wu-Tang Clan, Big Daddy Kane, and Busta Rhymes. And you will find out who the biggest star that he worked with. Welcome, AB. How are you doing today?
Oh, man, I'm blessed, brother. I'm blessed. How you feeling, man?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. So, AB, tell us, first of all, starting off, how did you get the name or choose the name AB Money?
You want to hear something? I got a best friend. He actually lives in South Carolina now, down here with me. My best friend, his name was Anthony D. So he was like, yo, we're going to call you Anthony B. I was like, Anthony B? He's, yeah. He said, Anthony B, man, he said, I'm the D and you the B. So instead of calling me Anthony B, I just cut it off and said AB.
That's interesting. Oh, wow.
It was my real good friend that actually gave me that name.
Now, when you came into the world, what did your parents name you?
Anthony.
Well, what's your last name?
Mosley. My last name is Mosley.
And where were you born at?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, brother, man. I was born in Brooklyn.
I call Brooklyn the center of the universe since I live here. Now, I was born in Manhattan, and that was the center of the universe until I moved to Brooklyn. So that's now the center of the universe.
Yeah, it's the center. Let me tell you something. Being in Brooklyn, because my background is Mississippi.
Okay.
That's where my mother and father was born at, was Mississippi. So I got both sides of my family in Mississippi. So I could have been a Mississippi boy. But born in Brooklyn, man, was the best place I could have raised up at, because Brooklyn is the Medina. It's the heart of everything.
Now, people in Manhattan or the Bronx or Queens don't think that. And of course, people in Sioux City, South Dakota don't think that. But hey, now that I live in Brooklyn, it's the place.
Yeah, man, Brooklyn was no down to no other place, but Brooklyn sets off the trends, man. Brooklyn is the heart of the world. That's the heartbeat of the world. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to down Manhattan or Queens or Bronx, because I think New York, period, is just the Mecca. The reason why I said Brooklyn is the Medina is because you will find Brooklyn anywhere. Just all you got to do is say is Brooklyn in the house. Guaranteed. I don't care what part of the world or where you at, somewhere from Brooklyn. Let me tell you who come from my project. You remember a group called Sky?
Oh, yes.
Sky, DJ Mr. C from Big Daddy Kane.
Okay.
He's my partner, Easy Mo B, JR, Witch Doctor that produced joints on Biggie album, Emmanuel Lewis. Yeah, man, there's a lot of celebrities come from my area, man.
The creativity of Brooklyn.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
Now tell me, first of all, let's talk about your parents. Tell me about your mother and father.
My mother and father was, let me tell you something. My mother and father was dope, man. My mother and father raised 5 kids. It was 3 boys and 2 girls. My mother was just a person who didn't go for nothing. See, me, my mother and father the same sign, Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio, my mother's a Scorpio, and my father's a Scorpio. So I grew up in a very musical and mental house. Like my mother and father both was talented. I come from a talented family. Like my whole brothers and sisters, all of them is talented into entertainment. My mom, she was just
What was her
a,
name? What
a
was her name, first of all?
Mabel Mosley.
Okay, Mabel Mosley.
You know, one of them old school names, Mabel. She raised us in the entertainment business alongside of my father. I come from good parents, man. So I grew up in the church world, understanding what the gospel music and the gospel was about. That's why I have a deep spiritual thing about myself because of my parents. My mom's was just very entertaining. I come from a house that when we grew up with Pity Pat and Poker Game. And I call it in one of my songs, I'm gonna send to you too. And I say hot sauce and fish grease. And the reason why I say hot sauce and fish grease because I came from the women, my moms and them would cook the dinners while my father and them, his friends would bring the liquor and stuff. So I'm very family and orientated. So I come from that background because of my mom's being around my uncles, being around my cousins, growing up with them. So my mom's was like a woman who she was the glue to everything.
And
You
your
know,
father? What was
my
your father's
my
name?
father my father name was Freddie.
Freddie Mosley.
Yeah. And Freddie, he where we all get the talent from. That's where I truly get my talent from. My father was one of the greatest dancers in the world. I grew up battling. I was the one of the best dancers in New York coming up in my days because that's where I started from. I started out dancing and I used to battle everybody. If I knew you knew how to dance, I was coming to you. I battled everybody from some of the biggest names. I battled them, street battled them, pop locking. I used to pop lock. And I was one of the best pop locking dudes back in the early 80s.
Okay.
So
Well,
my father,
let's stick with your father right now because I want to talk about growing up in Brooklyn.
okay, my father basically was one of the, like I told you, was one of the best dancers in Mississippi. And when he brought us to Brooklyn, my father was a hardworking man that took care of his family. My father was there the whole time with my family. You know what I mean? I
Okay.
grew up with both of my parents in the house together. And my father was just dope. My father used to can whistle a song like he's singing it. I have
Oh,
never heard no man do that. I never heard nobody do it. My father can whistle. And you know how you hear the vibrato in somebody's voices when they singing?
yes.
My father can whistle and you can hear that in his whistle. Like you would think my father's singing if he whistled.
Okay.
So
Now
my
you
father,
you grew up in Brooklyn. First of all, let me ask you a question. How did they get from? Because most people from Mississippi migrated
to
uh,
Chicago.
to Chicago first, but then it got cold. Because I have a lot of people say, "Oh, it was too cold," so then they moved to Los Angeles.
Right.
How did they get to New York?
They got to New York because of my father. My father, mother came to New York. My father brothers came to New York. So my father was the one who led the trail out of Mississippi because my
Okay.
father was the oldest boy. He was the oldest in the family out of
Mhm.
his brothers and sisters. So they followed my father to New York.
Mhm.
They got there because my father was tired of, I think, picking cotton and I think he used to drive the bus of the cotton,
Oh,
would
okay.
drive the people on the bus of picking cotton. And they just wanted to come to New York to make a better world because everybody was hearing about go, go to New York and you can make a better life for you. And that's what my father did. Came to New York and he started messing with gold and silver. And that's what he did for his career. You know what I mean? But that's how he took the time out to say, you know what, I'm not gonna let my kids waste their talent. So he started putting the talent into us and had us doing many shows. My father was like our manager too. My father took us around. I performed in every club in New York because of my father.
Now, where in Brooklyn did you all land? What part of Brooklyn?
We landed in Brownsville. We landed in Brownsville in a place called Atlantic Avenue in Saratoga. That's where Mike Tyson grew up at. I lived like next door to Mike Tyson all of my life. You know what I mean? I'm talking about Mike Tyson, the boxer. It was cool growing up in Brownsville. I think that was where the low income housing, I don't know at the time because we was living there, we never seen low income, but if Brownsville is still like it is today, that's one of the only places they haven't touched in New York is Brownsville. So we landed up in Brownsville where we all lived at in Atlantic Avenue in Saratoga.
Actually, going to the airport, you go down Atlantic Avenue and you see all the new buildings that's going up in Brownsville.
I just came from Brownsville 2 days ago,
Mhm.
and I see they trying to get Brownsville, but they didn't get deep up into Brownsville yet. But I know what you're saying about I seen the new buildings because where I lived at, it's all new buildings. The building where I come from, they put up all new buildings. I almost didn't recognize it. So yeah, they really building in Brownsville right now. I know they took over Best Style.
Yeah, hey, it's here. Now, what your first school? Where did you go to?
My first school was a school that I remember was a school in Brownsville called PS 73
And
in
how was
Brownsville.
it growing up at that time?
It seemed like we didn't have a worry in the world, man, because my mother and father didn't let us see no struggling, no hard times. I grew up cool, man. It was cool in school because when I landed there, I got a lot of friends. I always attracted a lot of people and I attracted some real good guys around me. Mike Tyson was one of them. I used to be hanging out with Mike Tyson back then, and I had a good friend, two friends named James. Both of their names were James. One lived it on Sumter Street, and one lived it on my block, MacDougal Street. And them two dudes became my best friends.
Okay, and then you went to junior high school.
My mother and father did a lot of moving. So I went to a lot of different schools. When I was living in Atlantic Avenue, I went to a school called 78. Then we moved from Atlantic Avenue to MacDougal Street. Then I went to a school called 73. That's PS 73. From PS 73, I went junior high school in Bushwick, and it was called IS 49. When we moved to Lafayette Gardens, I went to a junior high school called 117, and that was the school that I loved. That was on where Lafayette between Clawson and Franklin. I went to school over there on Lafayette and Clawson and Franklin, and me and Big Daddy Kane went to the same school. That's how me and I'm gonna talk a little later about how me and him got in the group together. But me and Big Daddy Kane went to that same school, 117.
And then what high school? Give a shout out to your high school.
Sarah J. Hell. I got to give out a shout out to Sarah J. Hell because Sarah J. Hell was an all-girls school until we came. And when me and Big Daddy Kane went to high school together too. So we went to Sarah J. Hell. I got to big up to Sarah J. Hell because one, it was an all-girls school and they let guys in me. So I took up cosmetology. I went to school for, I'm going in places I never went before, but yeah, I went to school for hair. I went to school, took up 4 years of cosmetology, and I went to school for hair.
So. I remember Sarah J. Hill because I had a television show back in the early 90s called Illuminations, and we needed someone to do the hair for the guests. And we got the students from Sarah J. Hill in that program to do the hair for the show. Yes.
But tell me, was it guys or girls?
Girls.
Okay, cool.
There was no guys in there. There was girls and the teacher, and they would come every week and do the hair on the set because we were shooting out of the Board of Education's TV studio on Tillery Street.
I know where that's at.
Yeah, so we got them to do it, and they did a wonderful job, and we always thank them for it.
Yeah, Sarah J was a great school for me because I also played on the basketball team of Sarah J too. Because I grew up playing basketball.
What position?
I was a point guard. I played point guard. And I'm going to tell you something, I was nice too.
I was going to say, you good? But I knew you were going to say that.
Let me tell you something. A lot of people thought that I was going to play NBA basketball over entertainment. I played in all of the tournaments in Brooklyn, and I won first place in a lot of the tournaments. I was MVP. I was MVP in school. They really thought that I was going to go all the way to the NBA in basketball.
What would change your mind in terms of choosing entertainment over basketball? Because they make a lot of money these days, don't they?
Yeah. But at the time, when I was coming up in the music business, to make a record was big. That is real entertainment. Like I gotta say the music business, because when I was coming up, you was a star before you was a star if you just made it halfway. And the women would be going crazy over you because I did all of the talent shows. See, one thing I love about Sarah J. Hell, they did a lot of talent shows in there. And me, Big Daddy Kane, and Biz Markie would get into the talent shows. Because Biz used to be up at our school like he went to Sarah J. We would do talent shows. We would do talents. We would be singing in the hallway. What got me into the entertainment instead of basketball was that I loved entertaining. I loved to perform in front of people. So I was always a performer from my father taking me to different shows performing. So I always wanted to be an entertainer over basketball. I love basketball, but I love entertaining more. And I thought the women was attracted to the entertainers more than basketball players at that time.
I don't know how many people that I've talked to that always said, I got into music because of women. Then I thought, I can make some money off of this.
I would have gotten entertainment if I didn't even make a dime. I love music that much. It wasn't even about the dollar. It was about me making somebody smile and making somebody feel good for what I've done. That's one of the things I love about the music, because what I do, I like to make people feel a certain way. So that's why I got into the entertainment business. I love what it did. And plus, I went to the school where it was all women. It was 2 buildings. Sarah J. Hell was one of the only schools in the whole Brooklyn that had 2 buildings. So it was full of women in one building and full of women in another building. So they would have these big shows at Sarah J. and people would just be amazed at us on the stage entertaining them. And I was like, I got to do this. But what really made me really do it was Big Daddy Kane.
Okay.
I seen that Big Daddy Kane got on. And I'm going to tell you a story. I didn't tell too many people. When Big Daddy Kane got on, he will always come back and get me. Right? And one day we went out. I went out with Big Daddy Kane to a place called City Island. And you can go to different restaurants in City Island. And we sitting at a table. And this girl, she bust through the crowd and was like, Big Daddy Kane, could you sign my breast? I'm looking, I'm like, what? And he took out the pen and signed her breast. I said,
did you, when you left Sarah J. Hale, did you go on to college or you started your career in terms of music?
My last year, I started to really get deeper into the music business. And that's when Big Daddy Kane was on already. Instead of going to college, I went to my friend named Sudan. Sudan was a dude that had a lot of money. And I came to him with my vision. I said, yo, Sudan, man, this is what I want to do. because I don't want to go to school because I'm tired of school now. I said, I want to get into this entertainment business and I need help. I said, yo, man, I would love for you to help me get in the business. He was like, what I know about the music business. I said, I'm gonna need a loan, but before I get a loan from you, I want to show you what I can do before I come and you just asking you to put up money for me. He's like, what you talking about? He said, all right, so do what you do. So instead of asking him for the money, I went to Big Daddy Kane. I said, yo, Kane, yo, man, if you can put us up in the studio and I can make a demo for my man, maybe I could get somebody to help me with the music. So he was like, okay, cool. He put me up in the studio, me, my partner, Easy Mo B, and I had went and got Easy Mo B because at the time he was in the crib just messing with records. He wasn't even producing or nothing like that. And I was like, I got these two friends that I want to bring into the music business, man. And they didn't really know too much about the music business, but they had a music background. So I started talking to Easy Mo B. I started going to his house. His mother wouldn't let nobody in the crib. So, and I would go there, yo, man, you need to get in the music business. Come on, man. He was like, ah. So I said, yo, I got Kane. He said, Kane? I said, yeah, I got Kane. He gonna give us the money to put for I could put us in the studio to record. So he gave us the money, and not only gave us the money, he was signed to Warner Brothers at the time. So what he did is came to the studio with us, and he talked on the record. And when he talked on the record, he said, yo, this is the Big Daddy Kane, and I'm kicking it smooth with the group called Riff. So I took that demo to Sudan, and I said, listen, he was listening to it. He heard it. He gave me $275,000.
Oh,
He gave it to me in a knapsack on DeKalb Avenue. I'm on Lafayette. I walked with this knapsack full of money from DeKalb to all the way to Lafayette with my knees shaking. I'm trembling now with this money because I'm like, I don't know. My friends are calling, hey, B. I'm like, yeah. So I goes upstairs. I open up the bag. It's 200 and something thousand dollars. I didn't see him for the next 2 to 3 months. He left and left me with the money. I was so afraid. I was like, because I'm calling him, he wasn't picking up the phone. Nothing. I did not touch not a dollar of the money. I had the money sitting in my crib in my house for 3 months. So he finally came back and was like, yo, so what did you do? I said, man, I didn't do nothing. You didn't tell me what to do. He said, I gave you the money. He said, you didn't do nothing. I was going to touch this money. You didn't tell me that I could touch it. He said, man, take this money and do what you got to do. I said, what? I went to Easy Mo B. I went to JR. I said, what you making that job? They told me how much they was making at their job. I said, yo, we're going to double your salary to quit your job. They said, quit? We ain't quitting no job. I said, look. I showed them that bag of money. They was like, hello, excuse me.
that's a precious story. Whoa.
Really. I'm giving you the exclusive, right? So they quit their jobs and I doubled their salary every week until we got a deal.
Now, how old?
Had to be 18.
18 with $275,000.
$275,000, 18 years old. And they was a little older than me by 2 or 3 years. So I was the youngest in the group.
Mm-hmm.
I know they probably like, I'm the youngest, but you the one who got us quitting the jobs and stuff like that. We went in the studio. We started recording songs. Then Sudan started coming to the studio with us and seeing. So I said, yo, Sue, you got to read the book of music. I started talking to Sudan. I'm the one
That was the book. This business called music.
Yep. So he started studying it, learning it, because he was already a smart dude. Started learning it. So while we in the studio recording, he was already making trips to California. So when he was making trips to California, he met these two guys named Shaquille and Tommy. Tommy and Shaquille had connects to the record labels out in Cali. So soon as we did the demos, and nobody was doing what we was doing. We was one of some of the first dudes that was mixing singing with rapping. So he took our demos out to California and they signed us for $450,000.
That's amazing. It's amazing because I know back in the early 70s, I had some groups that I was managing, but finding money was always the hardest thing to do. You had great ideas, but little cash and little opportunities of getting it.
Yeah. And I was always truly blessed to track money since a kid. I was always truly blessed to have people that finances my projects. I always. It was God have always tracked that spirit around me to track good people to believe in my ideas and what I wanted to do. And my boy, he gave me $250,000 without even blinking an eye because he believed in us. And think about it, I ended up making him back that money and more because we signed for 450,000.
Now tell me something.
Mm.
The first time that you got in the studio, you walk in and you get ready to do this. How did you feel?
Oh man, I felt incredible. I felt like the Temptations when they went in the studio on the movie and they finally got all of the right members, because before then I had other people that was going to join Riff. I had other people that was going to join the group before Easy Mo B and JR. I was already looking for people to be a part of Riff. But when I met them, I finally met the two brothers that I needed to make this vision of mine come true. You know what I mean? Because my vision was to mix doo-wop singing with hip hop and call it doo-hop. And I didn't have too many people that knew how to sing and rap at the same time. I knew somebody that was a good singer and I knew somebody was a good rapper, but I never had someone that can sing and rap. So these was the perfect fit. So when I walked in the studio, and it was my man Slow Mo. Everybody know his studio in Brooklyn, man. Um, it was Slow Mo Studio, and when we went in there, I felt like I was like this was my world. I had never thought about giving up basketball. Really not. It was okay for me to sit and be an entertainment until I walked in that studio. That was my first time ever doing a demo. Is when Kane gave me the money to go in the studio. When Big Daddy Kane gave me the money to go in the studio. So when I walked in the studio, I was like, this can't be what it is. And this is the craziest thing about this is when we first started recording, we was recording when you couldn't keep on having a playback. If you messed up, you had to do the whole record over. I'm talking about one part of the song. You could be almost finished.
I remember those days.
I don't know nothing about that. That's why you had to be good in my era to really do music, because you had to have a good ear, you had to have patience, you had to be focused, because I remember messing up and then we have to go back and do the whole song over one part in the song. So we would have to do the whole song.
27, and you've been in the studio all night because you have to do it over and over again.
We was getting out of the studio. This is no exaggeration. We would be getting out, we would go in probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and get out 5 o'clock in the morning. But me, Easy Mo B, and JR would, after we finished doing what we were doing and we playing our demo, our cassette tape in the car, and being so proud of what we was doing, that feeling, I would never change that feeling ever, man. Is like you said, going in the studio for that first time, doing our music and coming out saying, yo, we got to go back in here to do it. But by then, I had $275,000 at that time. So we was in the studio every other day now doing that, doing these songs and songs and songs. So it was incredible going on.
Did you ever get profile at all in a DVD magazine called Smack?
Yeah, I was in all those. Yeah, I was in Smack. Riff was in that magazine with Word Up magazine, Smack magazine. It was a couple of other magazines, but yeah, I definitely was in Smack magazine.
I want to give a shout out to my son, Craig Davis, who owned, along with a rapper that owned Smack magazine and put it out.
And being a part of the history of hip hop and giving us light and thinking of putting hip hoppers like myself in these magazines. So we got to really start honoring brothers like your son, because he was around the time of the Ralph McDaniels video music box. People got to started really giving these guys flowers, because they the one who blew up hip hop without Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. These was our Twitters and our Instagrams and our Facebook. People like your son.
He knew he made it with Smack when you're walking down Lenox Avenue in Harlem and you find people bootlegging Smack.
It was a good thing and a bad thing, because you messing up, money, but it was a great thing still what he did, and to come up with this whole idea of Smack. You know what I mean? I would love to interview him to see how he even came up with that name. What made him want to call that magazine Smack? Because we remember I had plenty of those magazines under my bed.
I have to put you together with him. Now, as you're going on, what was your first success in the music business that made people begin noticing you?
It was Riff. It was Riff. We had got signed Herb Alpert.
Uh-huh.
Herb Alpert is one of the big jazz players.
Yes.
And he created a label called A&M Records. A&M signed Janet Jackson, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Mint Condition, a group called Groovy Chill, and Rapping is Fundamental, my group Riff. And at the time, when we came along, they just started signing hip hop, because they had signed Janet Jackson too. And they signed us, and off of that $250,000 that I had got, they ended up seeing the quality of our music, signed us, and they put the record out. And that year, we won the best rap group and best rap album. Yeah, we won the best rap group and best rap album that year. And that was it for us. And I just got the pictures of the awards, just got some old pictures just recently of us being on stage and singing Rapping is Fundamental when we first won. And that year we went up against a lot of people that year, and we won the best rap group and best rap album that year. So that was our first success, was dealing with our own album with Riff, with Rapping is Fundamental.
Okay. Now, as you going along, what other artists have you worked with that of note that you have wonderful stories about?
Let's go back to Big Daddy Kane.
Okay.
Big Daddy Kane, I told you he gave me the money to put me and Easy Mo B and JR in the studio. What I started doing with him is trying to push Easy Mo B on Big Daddy Kane, because I knew Easy Mo B had the tracks. So I would go to Big Daddy Kane house like every day. Yo, man, you gotta check out Easy Mo B, man, because he got beats, man. He got beats. He was like, nah, man, because Marley Marl had Big Daddy Kane production, so he couldn't let, and Warner, so he couldn't let new outside producers that didn't have no hit records be on his album, because he would have main producers like Marley Marl on the album. And I kept saying, yo, you hear Rapping is Fundamental stuff. I'm like, yo, you gotta hear his production, man. His production is crazy. So Big Daddy Kane ended up letting him do 2 songs on that album. It was called Another Victory and calling on Mr. Warfare. So when he did it, that album went gold. That album went gold. So now Easy Mo B brought the success to Rapping is Fundamental from doing them two songs that everybody knew that I'm the one who hooked it up for him to even do the music for Kane. And when Kane, then after that, Kane started having us sing on his records. He was like, yo, okay, y'all could do the beats. Now y'all could sing on the records. So I'm on a few Big Daddy Kane songs. And Riff, we started singing on Big Daddy Kane songs. And by Kane being successful, got attention to us.
Okay. And now you move from Big Daddy Kane. What other stars that you were involved with at that time?
Man, we got involved with everything. I started doing Nice and Smooth, Little Sean, Houdini, Busta Rhymes, and then Easy Mo B you started hearing stuff from Craig Mack, Biggie, Tupac, Miles Davis, Heavy D.
Let's stop. At the very beginning, I had said to my audience that you had the privilege of collaborating with one of the biggest stars ever. And who was that? You mentioned him? No.
Heavy D?
I'm talking about Miles Davis.
Oh.
That's the man.
Stuff out. Let's cut it all out. You're right. Miles Davis, I had a chance to work with Miles Davis, man. And Miles, I can tell you stories beyond story. What you want to know about Miles Davis, because not only we got a chance to work with one song, but Easy Mo B brought the whole musical thing together, and we got to do Miles Davis' whole album.
Now, name that album.
That album is called The Doo Bop Song. The Doo Bop Song.
And it was the last album that Miles Davis did. I remember the album very well because I have both the album and the CD.
We won a Grammy. A Grammy for that album too.
Okay.
And Miles, man, was incredible. And then he named the album after a whole thing with us with the Doo Bop. He named the Doo Bop Song because my album was called on A&M Records was called The Doo Hop Legacy.
Uh-huh.
And he just mixed the bebop with the doo hop. And that's why the album was called The Doo Bop Song, because it was mixing our doo hop with his bebop. And he named the album right after the title that basically we gave to him.
How was it working with him at that time when he was sick?
It was great working with Miles because we didn't know he was sick. He didn't act sick. He didn't move like he was sick. He was just a dude that was about very musically inclined. Let me tell you a story. When we was recording on Miles Davis' album, it was a time that I would be in the studio watching him. And Easy Mo B would put on a track and Miles would be playing to the track, right? And while he in there playing, he would just stop. And he would have two women wiping the sweat off of his head and his face. Now the music is still going. Most of the time, we stop the music when you stop. And then be like, okay, take it back. He didn't want the music to stop. So he would let the music play. And I'm looking through the booth like, are you going to start? Are you going to let these people keep on wiping off your head and your mouth and your neck and stuff like that? Because you were sweating, they was wiping it, giving them water and stuff. I'm like, who is this dude? So then he would go back to playing after he took a little break while the music is still recording. I had never seen that before until I worked with Miles Davis. And he would just be playing the music, and then he would stop again. Let these people wipe his face off and stuff like that. And he would always be going like this with his mouth. And I'm like, are you gonna play? We letting the track just keep going when we don't normally we'll stop the track. but he would come back to playing again, and it came out incredible, man. It came out incredible. You got to check out the video. The video is out. It's called the Doo Bop song with us singing and rapping on that song.
Okay, I will, because I love that album. That was one of my favorite albums.
Oh man, thank you, man. Because Miles was definitely different. He wanted to try different stuff. I heard that actually Quincy Jones and Prince had supposed to did this album, but he really wanted to do something totally out of the box, and that was mixing jazz with hip hop.
It was a great
Um,
idea. It attracted me. I wasn't so much into hip hop, but that album made me stop and listen to certain hip hop artists.
that's what Miles wanted to do with, I think, all of his albums. He always, each album, he wanted to bring a different audience to himself. And this last album, that's like Miles went out with a bang. He did a
He did.
jazz hip hop album. You know
He
what I
did.
mean?
Most definitely did.
And he was one of the first people to do that, to first to fuse jazz and hip hop.
Now,
You know what
after
I mean?
you worked with Miles, you got to work with Tupac after that, didn't you?
Yep. I worked with Tupac after that. Hmm.
Okay. How was your experience in terms of working with Tupac? And how did he treat you in terms of what you did previously, particularly with Miles Davis? How
That's good that you asked that question. Tupac ran up to us. Easy Mo B don't tell this story. He might have forgot. But Tupac ran up on us in the city and was like, "Yo, I love what y'all been doing." Riff, he said, "One y'all is one of my favorite groups, man." He said, "Man, I love the work that y'all been putting in." He said, "Yo, I would love to work with y'all." So I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, but who is he?" Because at that time, he really wasn't that the man that he became.
Mhm.
So I told him that Big Daddy Kane was performing at this spot. So he I had told him to come down because that's where we're gonna be at. So he came down there that night, and that's how he ended up getting on the song with Big Daddy Kane, because it was us inviting him to come to Big Daddy Kane live show, and he
Okay.
ended up getting on the song. Him and Biggie getting on the song with Big Daddy Kane. So when we was there at the performance, he was like, "Man, we gotta go in the studio, man. Let's go in the studio tomorrow." I'm like, "This dude is hype." So we went in the studio, and we went in the studio. We came out with one of the biggest hit records, man. It was called Temptations, and that's the song that Easy Mo B got to produce the production, and we got to sing on, and it became a real big record. Sold over 10 million records.
And then you went from, did you go to work with Biggie Smalls first, or you work with Tupac first?
We worked with Biggie first because Big was from around my way. And this is another story that Big used to always come up to us too, because Big was younger than us, and we was the stars in Best Style at the time. So Biggie always wanted to work with us too. And I always used to tell him before DJ Mr. C, I would tell Big, because my man Kev, he was down with Biggie. So I would tell him about Easy Mo B beat. Yo, check out Easy Mo B beats when you gotta check out Easy Mo B beat. And somehow DJ Mr. C, that's Big Daddy Kane, DJ, all still in the same family, started reaching out to Big because of Kev, my boy Kevin. So Big, Mr. C would go over there to Big where they would record at and listen to the music and listen to him. And that's how Mr. C got to bring Biggie to Easy Mo B. It was through Puffy. When he got signed to Puffy, they was like, he always wanted to use Easy Mo B. This is before Mr. C even started talking to Biggie. through me talking to me, he always told me he wanted to use Easy Mo B at the tracks because he was loving what he was doing as far as the beats.
Okay. Now, how did you navigate the East Coast, West Coast rivalry? Because wasn't Tupac from the West Coast and Biggie was from the East Coast?
Yeah. Biggie, Biggie would be in the car with me and Easy Mo B. We would take him to the sessions of Tupac. This is before they started hanging out or being friends or none of that. We would bring Biggie to the studio. That's how Biggie ended up getting on a song called Running from the Police, because Easy Mo B is the one who produced that track. I used to be with Easy Mo B every day. That's my best friend. So we would go to the studio with Pop and then bring Biggie to the studio. And that's how Tupac and Biggie started becoming friends. It was because of bringing Big to the studio. I remember bringing Biggie to the studio, and a lot of the cats didn't even know who Biggie was in the studio, because he had a song out called Party and Bullshit. And that is the song that Easy Mo B did too. He did the production on Party and Bullshit. So we would be in the studio with Biggie, and then we would be in the studio with Pac. And then we brought them together, and that's how they became close friends and stuff like that. And plus, too, you got to remember, when we signed our record deal, we signed in California. We didn't sign in New York. We went to A&M Records in Cali. So we stayed in Cali for about 4 to 5 months. So we would be with all of the dudes in Cali. And it was a no beef or nothing going on, because a lot of them dudes loved it, my group, because Cali, one of the things I loved about California is they loved rapping and singing. It was the East Coast that didn't really value the rapping and singing, because they either wanted you to do one or the other. Either you wanted you to be a singer or you be a rapper. You doing it together, people didn't appreciate that. Because when we first started doing it, people was telling us not to do it. And now think about this, the whole world singing and rapping now. Something that people told us not to do. Mm-hmm. Everybody is doing now. So we started a trend that people still don't know to the day that we created this trend. Us and a group like Nice and Smooth. It was brothers like the Cold Crush brothers, but they was before our time, but they didn't do it in the way that we did it. We mixed doo-wop singing and real part harmonies with the rapping and singing. We brought that real harmony, like that burning fire can. Because when I was growing up, I used to watch these, I'm not going to say alcoholics, but they used to be drinking wine and they used to be singing by the burning fire can, doing stuff like boom, bam.
I had an uncle that sang on a song called Walking Away. Hey, oh, happy days.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I come from that era, the burning fire can.
Uh-huh. Now, where were you personally when you heard that Tupac was killed or got shot and then eventually died, and Biggie got shot?
I was in my house and I could not believe it, because you got to remember, I just left these dudes. I was with these dudes. And when I heard Tupac got shot, it put tears in my eyes, because I knew that something was going to happen to Tupac. I didn't know it was going to be that quick, but I knew from his spirit. When I was in the studio with him, I had told my boy, something will happen with this brother. And I don't know, but I feel like bad spirits around him. Not him, because Tupac was a good dude, but just it was this bad energy around him. So when I heard it, I was like, it put tears in my eyes, because I knew that we lost a poet. Like I looked at Miles Davis and Tupac could have been on the same level as Miles Davis. I think Tupac was a genius like that in his own, and a very creative brother. So I was home, man, when I heard that. And I remember calling JR and Easy Mo B and telling them what happened, because I got the news of Tupac getting shot before New York got it because I had people out there in Vegas at the time. So they called me like doing why it was happening. See, people didn't get a hold on it till a day or two that what happened. I got a hold on it within that hour. And they told me Tupac got shot and he looked like he wasn't going to make it, but he made it for, I think, what he lived for about 4 or 5 days or something like that.
Yes.
And then he died. But yeah, I was home, man, when I heard about that. I was very hurt because we had supposed to do a lot of big things, just like Miles Davis. Before Miles died, Miles was telling us he was going to take us on tour. We was on tour Europe. The same thing with Tupac. Wanted to sign my group Riff, Rapping is Fundamental, to his label because he just had got a label deal situation going on and he wanted to sign us. So we was about to do a joint venture with Tupac. So it hit me. I was home when I heard about it. With Biggie, I was out when I was out. I think we was in the studio when we heard that Biggie got shot and killed. We was in the studio, I think, and I remember we stopped the session and we couldn't even do the music no more because Biggie had got killed. Because Biggie was a little dude around my waist. So he's different from Tupac. Biggie was a dude that looked up to her. All them dudes looked up to us, but Biggie and we was celebrities before them. You know what I mean? Like over 6, 7 years before. Biggie was like more of a personal homeboy, a friend that just got killed. You know what I mean? So we took that to the heart. You know what I mean? Because Biggie lived it right down the street from us.
St. James.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Had a house on Vanderbilt Avenue.
So you the Brooklyn native. You are Brooklyn, man.
No, actually, I was born in Manhattan. But
Oh,
my father was military.
Manhattan.
My father was military, so I grew up all over the world. But we always came back to New York because we had my mother's mother was here. My father's mother was here, and they lived. One lived on 115th Street in the East. It's called the Martin Luther King Project now, but it was at that time the Stephen Foster Projects. And the other lived on the corner of Madison and 131st Street.
But how do you end up in Brooklyn?
I was living in North Carolina, and I got a job specifically to be able to move back to New York and having a job, not look for a job when I get to New York. I wanted to have a job, and I had an apartment, and it was Brooklyn.
So why you chose Brooklyn though over Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island? Why Brooklyn?
Because at the time when I was married to someone that was from Brooklyn.
Oh.
And they wanted to come back home to Brooklyn. I always appreciated living in Brooklyn and having my kids born in Brooklyn.
Oh, so your kids was born in Brooklyn?
My oldest son and my oldest daughter was born in Brooklyn. My other son, Craig, was born in the Bronx.
Oh, okay. And that's the one with the magazine?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So now let's end this by talking about some of the things that you have coming up, some of your plans in terms of moving forward.
Oh man, I got a couple of things going on. Now me and Easy Mo B is putting out a solo album. The name of the album is not out yet, but it's called Gumbo. And Easy Mo B, he's did a lot of production on the album. And I got 3 records out right now. Got a song called Too Young. It's with a guy named Big Bub. And I got a song out called Keep Feeding Me, produced by Easy Mo B. And I got a song right now out called True. And they all out. I was paralyzed. Let me tell you the story real quick. I had 3 surgeries. I had one brain operation and 2 lung operations. And when I was in the hospital, I made it where I wanted to do a solo album for my parents because both of my parents passed away. And they always wanted me to do a solo album, and I never got a chance. When I got out, so me and Easy Mo B went back into the lab and created this solo album. And that's why I got these singles that I've been dropping on the solo album. And I wanted to get a chance to fulfill my mother and father dreams of me doing a solo project. So I named the album Gumbo, and I'm putting out singles now off of this album. So that's our latest project that I'm doing right now. And I got a hemp farm, and I have a video and movie production company. So I'm going into the film now. I'm doing more music. I'm still producing. We still now producing artists and still coming up. Me and Easy Mo B still together, still doing what we do as far as the production. But now I got more hands on the production part than I ever had them in my life, because now I'm one of the owners. That's what I'm doing, man. I'm doing production. I'm doing film. I'm doing videos. I got a hemp company called OMG, stands for Organic Medically Grown, with my partner Caleb. And we are trying to heal the world. I love helping people, man. If I can help people, man, I'm satisfied with that, to fill out their dreams.
I congratulate you on your wonderful success. You've been around for quite some time, and it's appreciative to have you as a role model for our kids in terms of growing up and not learning that they could be whatever they want to be if they have the mental fortitude and stick-to-itness that it can happen. So thank you so much for being on my broadcast.
Hold up for 1 minute. I got to big up you. I got to give you the big up, man, because I want to say I'm proud of you and what you're doing too, brother, and giving us an outlet. More brothers like you, man. God bless your soul, because you give brothers like us outlet. You help a lot of people. And I want to give you a big shout out, Mr. Davis, to say thank you for even having me on your show, to be able to express myself and let people know the background from me and my family. I never got a chance to talk about my family, and you gave me an opportunity to talk about my mother and father that I truly love. So I want to thank you and all the hard work and all the success that you've been doing and helping people doing. So I want to give you a big shout out and thank you once again for even having me on the show.
Thank you so much. And that's it. The show about stuff. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.